When you watch the Olympics, you see the podium, the gold medal, the anthem, the moment. But behind every podium is years of falling, rebuilding, and showing up day after day and putting in the work no matter what. In this episode, I'm talking about how to tap into that Olympic spirit, not to compete, but to remember that if you're moving, you're winning. So let's get started. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I'm MJ Waddell, your host and founder of Share Yoga. I've been teaching, practicing, and loving yoga for nearly 30 years. I'm an advocate of movement, creativity, and staying healthy in mind and body after 50. It's never too late to start, and there's a lot of healthy years ahead. So let's start now. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Youthful Older Yogi. I'm MJ Waddell, the creator and founder of Share Yoga, and your host for this podcast. I've entitled this podcast, If You're Moving, You're Winning, Yoga and Healthy Aging. Okay, the Olympics are on right now. Today is February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Hopefully you're around someone you love or a pet, or maybe you have a memory of someone you love. So I'm just sending you love from my heart to yours today on Valentine's Day. But this podcast will come out a week later or so. But the Olympics have been on for about a week now, and I just love the Olympics. And it brought me back to a memory of 1972. I was watching the Munich Games. I was 12 years old and watching gymnastics, and Olga Korbut came on. Some of you may remember her. She was just this little sprite of a thing and a powerhouse, and she was doing these amazing things on the balance beam and the uneven bars and the floor exercise. Some of her moves just didn't seem humanly possible. But right then and there, I declared that I was going to be an Olympic gymnast. And I ran outside. I started to do cartwheels and round-offs and front walkovers in the front yard on the grass. And yeah, I was already in love with dancing and movement. So when I saw Olga, I thought, well, this is the obvious next best step. And I was just mesmerized by how she made everything so natural. Okay, well, my Olympic gymnastic career was very short-lived. Really, I think by the time you're 9 or 10, you already have to be pretty elite. And that window was closed for me at that time when I was 12. But I moved on to dance and theater, which I loved equally as well. So the thing is, that feeling and that spark, it's never really left me. And every 4 years, or now every 2 years, the winter, the summer, when the Olympics are on, I briefly reconnect with that spirit that I had when I saw Olga Korbut in 1972. And also the belief that, and the knowledge that your body can do incredible things regardless of your age. And it just also made me realize that type of dedication the athletes have and that kind of passion. It really doesn't have an expiration date on anyone. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I tie in some of these athletes to yoga. Let's talk about Lindsey Vonn, considered an older athlete at age 41, and she's had more surgeries than most of us can ever imagine. But she showed up. She showed up and she stood at the start gate saying, as long as I have a chance, I will try. And she had just had a major crash, I don't know, like a week or so prior. But isn't that incredible? She just said, as long as I have a chance, I'll try. It's a great mantra. And then, of course, came the crash and the devastating fall and the outcome that no one wanted, especially her. But what stays with me is that she went for it. And she still believed her body had something to offer. Many of us show up on our mat with histories, knee replacements, shoulder repairs, spinal stuff, chronic pain, old injuries, and we don't get medals, but we show up anyway. And then there's Jordan Stoltz. So he's a speed skater. I wasn't aware, I'm not aware of many of these athletes until the games come on, and because I don't really follow sports, but it's just amazing. And so I was watching him, and he's already at this taping, he's already won 2 gold medals and set 2 Olympic records. And he had such composure, but it wasn't really about his composure. It was about trusting his process, his workouts. They showed a clip of him working out in his basement, doing some pull-ups, like 5 sets. This is after he was on the rink, he was on the ice doing his regular training. And then he did, I think they call them box jumps in CrossFit, where you jump up on a box, but he was jumping up on a freezer in his basement. At the end of his workout, when his legs were already completely fatigued. And he just trusted that he had done the work coming into the Olympics, and that the work leads to being one of the best. And he's proven it so far. I think he has 2 more events. So good luck to him. Now, we won't set records with yoga, but it's the practice. It's practice of focused attention and awareness and trust. You just trust the breath. You've practiced, you trust the awareness you've built, and you trust that your body knows more than your mind thinks it does. So let's talk about Ilya Malinin, the quad god, they call him. He's a skater, and he does these quadruple jumps in the air. And he's a phenom because he's doing things in the skating world that no one thought possible. And, there was all this expectation built around him. He's going to bring home the gold. So all that pressure built up. And on that day when he competed in a single event, it just wasn't his day. I feel, heartbroken for him, but it happens. And some days, it's the same thing with your practice. Some days your practice, it'll feel strong, it'll feel fluid, it'll feel like you feel like so into it. Everything's working well. And then some days it's a total disaster. Tree pose feels like there's you're in a wind tunnel. And, some classes can feel quite magical. And then other days you practice and it's fine, but fine is still a practice. You can't show up every day and Ilya and think it's a gold medal, yoga practice day. So I also used to think, and talking of the pressure, I used to think as a teacher, I had to do all of the poses. And if I couldn't do all of the poses, how could I possibly be a good yoga teacher? Well, there are poses I will never attempt, and poses I've never done, and yet I still teach, I guide, I show up, and there's really no judging, there's no timing, there's no expecting any type of performance in yoga, thank God, and you get to breathe without proving anything, and you get to move without earning anything. And every time we notice ourselves judging, I'm stiff, I'm weak, I used to be better, that's not failure. That's the practice. And your mat is just one of the few places in life where you don't have to be good at it or anything to belong there. I love that. And then I want to talk about Maxim Naumov. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So his path, he's also a skater, his path to the games came after an unimaginable year where his parents were killed in a plane crash. That was in Washington, D.C., I think about a year ago. And on that plane were also lots of new and burgeoning young skaters. And they died. And so he lost his parents. And yet he kept going. I mean, not because the going erased his pain or erased his grief, but because the skating was what his parents gave him and part of what they believed in him, and he believed in himself. So many of us have had our worlds flipped upside down. We've had loss, we've had illness, we've had diagnoses, we've had heartbreak, we've had surgeries, we've had disappointments that we never saw coming. And it can feel some days just impossible to keep going. And yoga can be like that too. We don't step on the mat because life is perfect. We actually step on the mat because life isn't perfect. So if you're a teacher listening, I just want to speak to you for a moment about the pressure to be the best. Of course, a lot of us that teach, we could be perfectionists, quote unquote. And of course, I want to show up and be the best I can be. And I have worried about, am I making my students feel good? Do they walk away with any new knowledge? But here's what I've learned after 20 years of teaching and 30 years of practicing. Yoga, the practice itself, it already does that for you. It makes them feel good. You don't have to push yoga. It's the yoga that's already doing the work for you. And I believe our job as yoga teachers is to just offer suggestions. I consider myself a big suggestion box. I offer the cues, the variations, the shapes, the alignments, and then I just let students have their own experience. If you show up as your real, authentic, slightly creaky human self, and you lead a delicious shavasana at the end of practice, people will leave feeling like they won the day. I typically hear, oh, I really needed that. I feel so relaxed. I feel so peaceful. I have not once heard anybody walk out of class saying, oh my God, that really sucked. So just take comfort in that. Yes, show up, do your best, but don't push to be the best. And as for you practitioners, myself included, stop waiting for the perfect hour to practice. If you have 10 minutes to breathe, that's your practice. If you have 20 minutes to get in a walk, that's your practice. Practice kindness. Play with your pets, play with your kids, play with your grandkids, right? Try something new. And just rolling out your mat, even when motivation is low, just rolling it out and just sitting on it, it all counts. If you are moving, you are winning. I always stress that, just to keep moving. Even though we may have the aches, we may have the scars, we may have a life that looks very different than we imagined when we were 12 years old. But we start where we are, we move mindfully, we breathe, we keep going. So some days when I roll out my mat, I still imagine myself as that 12-year-old running outside, doing roundoffs and front walkovers and cartwheels on the front grass, dreaming and believing in success. And I find success every time I take a deep breath, every time I move my body, and every time I give gratitude for this body, this breath, and this practice. So if you'd like a 10-minute gratitude meditation for your miraculous body, you can subscribe to my free newsletter. This year, I've been attaching free meditations to the newsletter. So just go to shareyogawithmj.com, shareyogawithmj.com, subscribe to my newsletter. It's free, and you can unsubscribe anytime you want. I literally maybe do it twice a month, but it's not a, you won't get emails continuously. And I'm still learning how to get my meditations onto my website. So you can just go into the free stuff, but one step at a time. I'm showing up, breathing, learning the technology slowly, but I'm showing up. So I want to thank you for listening or watching on YouTube. And by the time you see this, the Olympics will nearly be over. And I hope you're enjoying it. And again, if you're moving, you're winning. Thanks again so much for listening. And until we meet again, keep sharing yoga. Namaste. Thank you so much for listening. Now you can go to my show notes on YouTube or Buzzsprout and send me a voicemail or email. I'd love to hear what topics you'd like me to speak about, what your thoughts are on the episodes, and maybe I'll share your message on a future episode. Please subscribe to my website, shareyogawithmj.com, so you can receive my newsletters and be first to know about my retreats, workshops, courses, and freebies. If you navigate on social media, you can find me mostly on Facebook and a bit on Instagram at Mary Jane Waddell. That's Jane with a Y, Jayne. This podcast would not be possible without the help of my editor, Dan Jones from Cocoa Beach Productions. You can find Dan at cocoabeachweb.com. And of course, thanks to my generous guests who share their time, insights, and youthful wisdom. Remember, the Youthful Older Yogi podcast is presented solely for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for a physician or other qualified professionals. Okay, yogis, stay well, stay youthful, and keep sharing yoga.